Right now I want to talk to you a little bit about one of my absolutely favorite things to do in the summer, and that's fish for smallmouth bass. You know, I live in central Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. The fact of the matter is we also have fantastic river fishing. We've got a lot of big rivers in Minnesota, moderate-sized river, and even small rivers, and a lot of them actually have pretty good big populations of smallmouth bass. To initially find these fish is pretty key too. Obviously, you know, I'm going to talk a lot about individual lures to use, but realistically, these smallmouths within even a 30 or 40 mile section of water can move from cold water period in winter to spring. When they start to spawn, they'll move upriver and find potential spawning areas, you know, and that could be way up in the feeder rivers. And then once a river starts to stabilize now, which it is now, and the water levels is dropping, this is really the key time, and it's right now. About usually second, third week of July into the first week of August, this starts to happen in our lakes right now, or our rivers right now. But the fact of the matter is, the key is to find those sections of the river where the fish are at. And at this time of the year, no question about it, you want to be focusing on areas of the river where it's shallow, fast water. And what I mean by that, it may be only the maximum depth in the river may only be 5 to 7, 8, 10 feet deep, but you have boulders all throughout there, and it's usually a constriction point that you have faster current, and that's going to concentrate large groups of smallmouths at this time of the year throughout the warm water period. Now let's look at baits, and this is a big thing, and I really love using specific lures for river fishing, and I've done it a lot. I actually grew up on the edge of the Mississippi River and spent a tremendous amount of time on the St. Croix, the Rum, the Rainy, all these rivers that are spread around Minnesota. And the interesting thing is all these lures would work in every one of those particular rivers. The first lure I want to talk about is a topwater lure. No question about it. A topwater is one lure you want in your boat when you're fishing for smallmouth bass throughout the summer in rivers. And there's a couple of different reasons why. And one thing, it's highly efficient. In river situations throughout this time of the year, you have rocks, weeds, wood, boulders, fast current. The interesting thing is when I throw this bait out, I very rarely get it hung on anything. So it's highly efficient, and that's really, really key. Also, smallmouth bass are just really highly susceptible to feeding on topwater. The other thing, one thing that I'm going to really look at is the bait itself. This particular bait is a Rapala skitter prop. And this particular bait, above all other baits for me, for a river smallmouth bait, would be my choice. And the reason why, because I can move this bait very little, and this blade is still spinning in the current. So I can go rip, and the blade is still spinning, and so it has the ability to attract the fish not even when the bait is moving. It may not be moving, and this tail is still turning and flashing, so the fish can ID the bait. And you can fish it under such a wide variety of different situations, from out on boulder humps, around the front face of a log jam, the front face of a rock pile, along any type of current breaks. It's just a highly efficient lure you definitely want to have in your boat. Not to say a popper wouldn't work, because they do, but for my money, a prop bait is a key bait that you should have in your boat. Secondly, is a crankbait. This is a DT8, a DT6, crawdad colored. Is a really key bait. It's really highly efficient for specifically over rock flats. You get out in the middle of the river channel when that water's low, and I can fan cast and sweep it over any type of boulder edges. Same thing, current pushes, the edge of deep current seams. It's just a highly efficient lure, particularly when you want to cover water really pretty quickly. A crankbait does that for you. There's no question about that. One bait that I use a real lot, particularly around each one of these lures have the tendency to shine in a very, very specific location. And for a lot of times we're fishing around wood. We have fallen woods that have fallen into the water. You have log jams and all these different things. A spinnerbait is a highly efficient lure to be able to fish through areas where a crankbait or even a topwater bait you can't, because I can take this, pitch it into a log jam, let it drop down in front of it, and let it sweep almost underneath the logs and the cut banks with a spinnerbait. You know, spinnerbait's a really key bait for river fishing, no question about that. one of my absolute favorites at different points in times, particularly if you have darker water or the fish are tighter into the cover. It could be actually over weed flats sometimes as well. One lure that allows for a soft plastics anyway, I would say this is a good option. This is a 3.8 big bite pro swimmer with a VMC swim jig head on it, tungsten swim jig head, relatively lightweight. One thing I want a lightweight bait in the fact that what I can do with that lure, it doesn't sink to the bottom quickly. I want the bait that you can cast out and let it swing with the natural current flow. And that's actually something that I did not state with all these other baits, whether it be the crankbait, the spinnerbait, the topwater. How you're presenting the bait is really, really key. And I'm casting it perpendicular to the bank and letting it sweep downstream and sweeping it like this. And the reason is that because the fish are always facing upstream, and I want the lure to land here and sweep into their face like this. It's a key presentation for catching any fish in a river. The other bait that's a real good bait, particularly when the fish are more neutral or negative, and I'm not seeing fish moving on these faster moving baits, is the 2.5 big bite salt tube. Very lightly weighted. I have a VMC interior weighted tube jig in here. And what this is really pretty key, because a lot of times what will happen when these fish are inactive in a river fishing situation, they'll drop down from key feeding positions. What I mean by key feeding position could be the front end of a log jam, the front face of a current push, the front face of an island. A lot of times what they'll do when they're inactive, they're gonna drop downstream from those spots and position in slacker water where they don't have to fight the current. And that's where this bait really, really shines. What you can do is I can go in there and I'll make really short casts on those deeper current seams into the slack water of the current seam and just let it tumble along that edge is really key, and it's a fabulous lure for smallmouth bass. Well, realistically, the 2.5 tube, you wouldn't go anywhere in North America for smallmouth bass and not have this tied on your one of the rods. I mean, this is just that highly effective. But one thing that I can say, smallmouth bass throughout the summer months is one fun deal. It really is. It's absolutely one of my favorite activities throughout the summer months. Actually, we were out yesterday and we had a banner day out in the water with almost every one of these lures.